single term she served as an independent senator, the late Olive Sawyer showed herself to be a woman of tremendous foresight. A former school teacher and a community development practitioner for many years, Ms. Sawyer was the first Tobago woman to be appointed to the Senate, and her concerns, repeatedly expressed in her contributions to debates in the upper house, had to do with a number of areas of Tobago's development that would come into focus long after she left the Senate in 1986. Those concerns related to 6 principal areas she felt were deserving of urgent attention. 1. The rehabilitation and renovation of the Crown Point Airport that would go on to be named the Arthur N.R. Robinson International Airport after Tobago's proudest son. 2. The need for tourism development, particularly in respect of improved transportation and other basic amenities. 3. A new general hospital for Tobago to better serve the health needs of Tobagonians. 4. Improved air and sea transportation links between Trinidad and Tobago. 5. A deep water harbor in Scarborough to facilitate an expected increase in cruise ship arrivals. And 6. The need for some tangible approach to appreciating and developing the natural talents of Tobagonians, especially for the benefit of the island's young people. Her niece and adopted daughter, Eldika Brown, recalls Miss Sawyer as not only possessed of an uncanny foresight, but points out that she was someone who put Tobago first in everything she sought to do.
She was interested in Tobago, in Tobagonians, and she did everything she could to improve Tobago, improve the people, improve Tobagonians. Things were slow, but she worked hard to improve things as she went along. There's still people who still talk about her. They still remember the good things she did, and she'll always be remembered by Tobagonians.
Fiercely independent in her political thought, Olive Sawyer remained aloof from party politics throughout her professional career. And Mrs. Brown says she remembers Miss Sawyer as a person who would ensure that every minute of her day was spent productively. There were some long hours in that day, she says.
Well, she worked about 18 hours a day. Sometimes she came home at midnight, driving from the country, from Charlottesville, all over Tobago. Her work meant everything to her.
According to Mrs. Brown, although she had retired 7 years before going into the Senate, Miss Sawyer did apply this strict work ethic to her deliberations in the upper house.
She enjoyed working, she enjoyed being in the Senate, she enjoyed the company, and she did all she can for Tobago.
Edward Hernandez, well-known artist and curator of the Tobago Museum, remembers Olive Sawyer as someone who was held in high esteem by all strata of the society. He recalls her going from one community to the other, often plodding along streets that were without electricity, and almost always accompanied by her fellow community development officer and lifelong friend Eileen Guillaume, persisting in the difficult, if not impossible, task of trying to improve the lot of the simple country folk, and sticking to the task usually without the resources that would have made it more rewarding. He says the two women had a keen understanding of the psyche of the Tobagonian.
What I recall most interesting about both Mrs. Guillaume, or Tanti Eileen as you call her, and Miss Sawyer, is their diversity of language. You know, well-spoken English. But when they got into the rural areas, they got into the Tobagonian vernacular, which I couldn't understand. you know, and to settle quarrels, you know, and shout out to them, blah, 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 blah.
Mr. Hernandez says he was inducted by Ms. Sawyer into a program aimed at seeking out the more talented Tobagonians and getting them to disperse some of their knowledge and skills among the youth. He says he was often present to witness one incident or the other that illustrated the high regard in which Ms. Sawyer was held, particularly in the country districts.
I remember Teacher Olive will pass by a fishing village and see the fishermen quarreling, and the fellows will say, are you shut up, Auntie Olive here. and so her presence in itself settled quarrels.
It was in 1981 that President Ellis Clark appointed Ms. Sawyer to the Senate as an independent senator. She took her oath of allegiance on November 22nd of that year. Being the proactive person she had been in community development, Ms. Sawyer soon delivered her maiden speech and got down to the business of looking after those things that concerned her. She wanted to know whether the Crown Point Airport was outfitted to accommodate a decision by the central government to upgrade the fleet of aircraft flying to Tobago from turboprops to jets. She expressed a concern about a decision by the government to terminate the contract of the MV Gelting, the only inter-island vessel then operating between Port of Spain and Scarborough. She noted that the Scarborough Hospital had outgrown its usefulness and should be replaced by a facility befitting the aspirations of a forward-looking country. And she let the Senate know that the time had come for the powers that be to establish both a performing arts center and a technical and vocational school in Tobago. It was her ongoing focus on these bread and butter issues throughout her entire term in the Senate that continued to endear Senator Sawyer to her fellow Tobagonians. So much so that both Olive Sawyer and Eileen Guillaume were the subject of this book written in 1990 by Marcia Carrington, a Tobago scholar. The title of the book, Daughters of Tobago, The Lives of Two Outstanding Contributors, Ms. Olive Sawyer and Mrs. Eileen Guillaume. The book notes that Ms. Sawyer retired from government service in 1974 after some 40 years of duty. During the independence celebrations of that very year, 1974, her achievements in the field of community development earned her a prestigious national award, the Public Service Medal of Merit Gold. Following her retirement, UNESCO appointed Ms. Sawyer to supervise a pilot project in Tobago called GROW, Group Resources of Women. She accepted the challenge mainly because the objectives were similar to a major part of what she had sought for so long to achieve in her work as a community development officer, the advancement of women. Having completed her UNESCO assignment, Ms. Sawyer decided to devote her time to pursuing her enduring dream, traveling to faraway places. And upon her return home here in Calder Hall, she would almost immediately begin preparing for her next adventure abroad. By this time, her name was already something of a household word in Tobago.
In fact, a friend sent her a letter from Africa, and all he wrote was Olive Sawyer, Tobago, and the letter came to her. That shows how well she was known in Tobago.
There is no doubt that Ms. Sawyer's popularity in community development, as well as her independent spirit, played a large part in her appointment to the Senate. The Marcia Carrington book has this to say about Ms. Sawyer's acceptance of that appointment. She would not have accepted any other office than that of independent senator, as she wanted the freedom to speak for whatever she endorsed or against whatever she did not support. This would not have been the case had she been affiliated with any political party. Olive Sawyer was one of just 2 women on the independent benches of that 1981 to 1986 Senate. A fellow female senator was Ms. Louise Horn, then president of the Surreptitious Club, but a woman who shared a similar background with Ms. Sawyer, having also made her mark both as a teacher and a social worker. The 2 women would join the likes of men like Michael de Lavassie, who would go on to be appointed Chief Justice and later President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, businessman George Bovell, Winfield Scott, and Alwyn Chow, trade unionist Vernon Glean, attorney-at-law Ashford Sinanan, and Dr. Percival Harnarayan, a prominent medical doctor. It was an upper house presided over by Dr. Wahid Ali, who would become the longest-serving president in the history of the Senate and a man for whom Senator Sawyer developed great respect. She is quoted as having described Dr. Ali as being extremely fair to all sides of the Senate, preferring to handle all misunderstandings and disagreements in private, often over tea. But the significance of the position held by Senator Sawyer in such a male-dominated forum is not lost on someone like Anne Mitchell Gift, herself an accomplished Tobago woman. Mrs. Mitchell Gift is the presiding officer of the Tobago House of Assembly.
So she was one of the strong women out there in the community, doing the best she can, the best she could, to really move things forward. And that was Olive Sawyer. Because like everything else, you know, most of these occupations, most of these activities were not for the faint-hearted. And therefore not too many women ventured out, and you were really, when you got there, it meant that you really were prepared to stand up to the men, because you were gradually going into what was essentially the world of the men, because we still saw women as being in the background supporting the men, but not being supported by the men when you wanted to reverse roles.
Mrs. Mitchell Gift notes that the decision Ms. Sawyer made to place the pursuit of her career path above any other personal distractions may have contributed significantly to her success in making a name for herself.
She didn't really get married, although she did have adopted. She did, you know, adopt children, so that even though she might not have had that, but then again, perhaps the fact that she did not have the whole husband and everything to deal with, it gave her more time and more scope to really compensate and really go out there and make her name, because there are very many strong independent women, and she really showed what a woman who is determined enough could do, and that I think would be her legacy.
Olive Sawyer died on September 21st, 1997. 5 years later, in commemoration of the 40th anniversary of the independence of Trinidad and Tobago, she was posthumously selected as one of the 40 outstanding individuals and groups in Tobago who were honored by the Tobago House of Assembly for their public service.
She was missed a lot. She was missed a lot.